Hail Swabbies, this is your operator speaking. And I want to talk to you about Jurassic World. More importantly, I want to discuss about how Jurassic World is not a movie about dinosaurs. I want to discuss about how Jurassic World is not a movie about a survival thriller, because that's what they've been in the past. Jurassic World, in my opinion, is a Gothic thriller. I got a chance to watch it over the weekend through work. I got free tickets for a preview. Got to choose my own seats and everything. It was fantastic. And we got these great shirts and everything. It was wonderful. And I was really excited to see it because it's been how long since we've seen the first Jurassic Park? It's been a while. And the other two were okay, but didn't really thrill me like the first one did. Now, the first one was very much about surviving after a kind of an apocalyptic scenario. Sci-fi thriller, if you will. This most recent installment in that universe is not that at all. Now, before I go any further, I would suggest parents avoid bringing your children to this. I think you should screen it first. Just saying. The other thing is, this video will contain spoilers, so bear that in mind, alright? Alright. So, the reason why I think Jurassic Park is a Gothic text. Man, this movie was really dark, let's be honest. Let's look at a list of things that occur in Gothic text. Certain tropes and things like that. Now, when I say text, I mean anything that can be read. Anything that can be observed, read, watched, anything like that. So a text can be anything from a video game to a movie to a book. Gothic literature contains certain tropes such as the supernatural, mad science, good versus evil, monsters, violence, duality, power struggle, dark, broody tones. There are a few more, but those are the main ones. So let's discuss Jurassic World's approach to each of these different tropes. Of course, it was very violent. There was a lot of terrible violence in this film, and that's to be expected. We want the dinosaurs to break free and eat people, and then we want the people to succeed in bringing these dinosaurs down. That's exactly what happens. We see it happen, and we know it's going to happen over and over and over again in the other films. There are a few twists and things that were unexpected, but for the most part, that's what this is. It's a monster flick. Because what they create is not a dinosaur. The Indominus Rex, it's funny because the running joke is everybody makes fun of that stupid name. But the violence is wanton, to the very least. But there's a sequence where one of the tertiary characters, someone that you kind of know, but she's not really that important to the story, she gets carried off by a pterosaur and dropped and picked up again and dropped and picked up again. And this happens in the water as well, where the Mosasaurus tank is, and this happens over and over and over again. And I mean, the sheer terror and her screaming and the clamping on her and everything like that by the beak of the pterosaur, and it's really bad. And then the Mosasaurus shows up and swallows her and a good portion of the pterosaur up. Alright? Just appears out of nowhere. Now, I tend to overanalyze things, and I understand this, and you may be upset with how I analyze this movie, but she got swallowed whole. She didn't have the pleasure of being bitten in half like most of the other characters did. That means that she either drowned or was digested alive in the belly of the Mosasaurus, okay? This is bad, but nobody else seems to care. Maybe I am just overanalyzing it, but it really disturbed me. This was a very violent sequence. There's a lot of that throughout this whole thing. Be prepared. But that occurs in Gothic tropes as well. Really visceral violence. When Frankenstein is confronted by his monster for the second time after he's out on the Orkneys, and he's trying to create the second monster, when he realizes that he shouldn't be doing this, he tends to shred the body of his second miscreation, leaves it all over the place. It's sickening. Like, when you really honestly think about what Victor Frankenstein is doing at this point, he has accumulated all of these bits and parts of a human body, conceivably female, because he's trying to create a mate for his first monster, and then puts it together, sews it together at certain spots and things like that, gets all these bits and bobs together, and then has second thoughts and decides to shred the thing. It's gross. So, let's talk about good versus evil. You have a lot of good versus evil going on because you see the kind of corporate problem that's coming up a lot, and that's a trope that happened in the previous Jurassic Parks, that we were willing to spare no expense regardless of whether or not we should actually be doing this. I remember this being a topic of discussion when they went to sit down to lunch after seeing the Velociraptor paddock. In Jurassic World, you have a lot of good versus evil, where the corporate side of things shows up a lot, but also the monster ends up being very evil as well. How do we know this? Because at one point it does start killing, and it starts killing for just the sheer pleasure of it. There's a whole field of Littlefield's mother dying in Jurassic World because the monster just shredded it up and kept moving. Indominus Rex just kept moving. I had to witness Littlefield's mother's death again. Who does that? That makes the third person that's evil in this film the freaking producers. What makes this different from the other films is that the dinosaurs were certainly played up as evil, but they really were just animals hunting. Even the velociraptors, there was a certain measure of these are evil, they are seeking out the humans, but honestly, they were just hunters. One of the most evil characters within this narrative happens to be the character played by Vincent D'Onofrio. The other evil character in this narrative happens to be Vic Hoskins, who's played by Vincent D'Onofrio. And he's the military leader over the privatized army that InGen has, the company that has been funding all of this. He wants to weaponize the velociraptors, and this is mentioned a bunch of different times throughout the film, in order to hunt down and kill insurgents or terrorists or rebels. He conceives it as a better investment to send these killers in to go and hunt down bad guys than to invest in the lives and training of human officers, which he, like most other military personnel, likes to hide behind that we're protecting human loss of life, but really you're not, because you're still sending these things out to go and kill people. What makes it worse is that we're not just killing them, but we're also sending these things out to eat them. That seems like a really huge moral problem to me. Barring the fact that killing is bad, period, having somebody eaten alive seems to be just kind of a step above that being an issue. Now, I looked it up, and I don't see anything in the Geneva Conventions or the biological conventions, the biological warfare conventions, that bar somebody from using weapons such as this in a combat situation. But I don't see it being too far off in this narrative. Duality. This is another big trope in Gothic literature and Gothic text. You have characters that have double lives. You have characters that lead different sides at different times. You have Dr. Frankenstein, who is this wonderful, caring person who has this beautiful family, and he really wants to get to know them, and they know him as this kind and caring and intelligent, charismatic individual, but then he's haunted by this beast that he created, both psychologically and physically. He's haunted by the fact that he's effectively created something that he should not have, and it is an aberration to nature and to God. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, obvious duality example. You have Dr. Jekyll, who wants to be able to do the horrible things that he wants to do, the moral gray areas, but still maintain his reputation and turn back into his uprightly, upper crusty, posh self. This happens a lot in Jurassic World as well. You have people thinking that Indominus Rex is a dinosaur, when in fact it is not. It looks like a dinosaur. It even walks and roars like a dinosaur, but it is not a dinosaur. That's a weak example. Let's take Dr. Wu, for example. Dr. Wu is the one who was behind the genetic science that was able to bring the dinosaurs back to life in the first film. And he's also the one that's been put in charge of this project here at Jurassic World. He works for InGen and he works for Maserati to continue to build dinosaurs from genetic... Well, I got a text. Oh. He works under Maserati as the genetic scientist that continues to bring out new dinosaurs, but he's also working for InGen's private military with some secret deal that he has with Hoskins, and that isn't totally revealed in the film. But you can see that he's got two different things going on. That's why he has this secret lab locked away off to the side. You also have the duality of the relationship between Chris Pratt, who is Owen Grady in the film, and Bryce Dallas Howard, who is Claire Deering in the film. Owen is this rough-and-tumble Navy military velociraptor trainer, and Claire is this high and mighty, I'm in control of my entire world, and I look prim and proper. She ends up removing herself from the world that she has created, that has all of this control, in order to adapt to the situation and save the day at the very end. Owen doesn't change much, and I find it interesting that it's the woman who's the only one that really has a lot of development being made. Something also to note about this film is that a lot of things come in pairs. You have the velociraptors that come in pairs. You have Owen, who has his French buddy. You have Owen and Claire later on in the film. You have the two boys. But when that duality, when that pair is interrupted, chaos seems to ensue. For example, the Indominus Rex monster was created with a sibling. It ate the sibling and became dysfunctional, as Owen put it. When the T-Rex takes down the Indominus at the very end, it cannot do it by itself. It's not until a velociraptor comes in and helps out that the two are able to succeed in bringing the monster down. Vic Hoskins acts on his own, and as a result is a loose cannon and goes and takes over and causes all kinds of a ruckus. Same thing with Maserati. He's not really paying attention and ends up getting killed as well. Dr. Wu is the lead top scientist, but he's really not under anyone's gun except for Hoskins. Otherwise, he's acting on his own, and this is also allowing him to make very questionable ethical calls. Which brings me to my next point, power struggle. Obviously, you have the power struggle between the monster and trying to figure out where it fits in the food chain, as mentioned in the movie, but you also have Hoskins wanting to take over so that he can do a military exercise and see if the velociraptors are a viable combat weapon. Supernatural and mad science. Now, this is another really big trope in Gothic text and literature, and Dr. Henry Wu is definitely a mad scientist. He seems to want to place the blame on a lot of other people as well, and that seems to be another huge trope, is the blame game. Because if you look in Frankenstein, Victor totally uses the monster as a scapegoat for all of his woes and worries, which is a problem because Frankenstein is the one who created the monster, right? So you have the mad science of imprinting all of these different creatures into the monster, Indominus Rex, without honestly thinking through what's going to happen, or thinking through what's going to happen and not actually caring. I did find it a little bit too out of suspension of disbelief in the sense that the monster all of a sudden could camouflage because it had cuttlefish DNA in it. It could hide itself from thermal scans because it had tree frog DNA in it. The tree frog DNA was so that it could adapt to the climate in Isla Nublar, and then the cuttlefish was something to do with being able to handle growing so quickly. But we never stopped to think that the other traits of these animals would come through. And that seems to be a problem for me, because I don't see how adding cuttlefish DNA would allow a monster to develop that trait of using camouflage unless you specifically added that gene. There are a lot of other tropes in this film, but I'll tell you what, the main thing that tipped me off, that made me feel like this was more Gothic text than just a sci-fi thriller, is the ugly feeling I had at the end of the film. I'll be perfectly honest with you, I was sick to my stomach by the end of it. There wasn't a whole lot of gore, there wasn't a whole lot of really just bad scenes, except for that one. I had nightmares when Mara was taken away by the pterosaur. It's just bad news. But it was the ugly feeling I felt. And it's the kind of ugly feeling you feel after reading The Telltale Heart or Wuthering Heights. So tell me that I'm a pansy and that's fine, I don't care. this was a hard movie to watch. It was a fun roller coaster ride. It was an amusement ride, and it also seemed to be a teaser or a commercial for a sequel to come up. And judging by the numbers now, it's pulling what? 200 million in the last 3 days? I think we are definitely going to see a sequel. I love the fact that they brought back some of the things that Michael Crichton wanted us to use. For example, the gyrospheres. But otherwise, it was a difficult film to watch, guys. I'm just making you aware. So, add some comments. Keep in mind about these Gothic tropes, because these will be things that we will discuss later on as well. Because I want to attach those tropes to video games that I have played in the past as well. Thanks for watching. This is OP. No rest for the wicked.